Important question. Where did we come from? Did we come from apes, aliens, or Adam? And today we're going to talk about C14, radiocarbon dating. C14 or carbon 14 as it pertains to dinosaurs. Now, you'll see from the title it says that dinosaurs lived 20,000 years ago. I think it's even less than that, but we'll get into that in just a moment. I want to thank everybody for joining us, whether it be on the live or on the recording, replay that is. Now, dinosaurs. There's evidence of dinosaurs. They did live at one time. In the Paluxy River in Glen Rose, Texas, I saw hundreds of three-toed and some Stegosaurus, Brontosaurus or Brachiosaurus-like footprints. Those are cool. Those are big and round with like toes. But the majority of dinosaur prints are the three-toed. I saw them all over the place. The river was dry, something that doesn't occur very often, and we flew down to Texas and checked them out. This was actually taken from the state park, Dinosaur Valley State Park. This was one of the prints that the paleontologist lifted out of the bed a couple of years ago. And there you have it. Dinosaurs did exist. That's not the issue. The issue is how long ago did they exist? Is it 66 million years, as we have been told over and over and over and over again, and that they were destroyed with a huge asteroid that slammed into the Yucatan Peninsula right there and destroyed all the dinosaurs. I'm surprised some didn't survive. I mean, some. Why the dinosaurs? Why did it just kill like almost every single land animal on the planet? For some reason, I have a hard time with the idea. And it's not just because I have a bias against it. I'm just saying plausibility. Can a 6-mile asteroid slamming into the Earth really hard without breaking the Earth in two, can it really do the kind of damage that destroys all of these dinosaurs? And how did they die? Suffocation, I'm assuming. But what caused all those dinosaurs then to be buried where we can find their bones? Obviously, it must have happened before that event, right? Because you need water for the most part. Most all fossils that are in water. I mean, even this footprint right here, you had to have limestone mud in some places in the Paluxy River. The footprints were 13 inches deep. These were the larger dinosaurs that pressed in the earth even further than these, but 13 inches. Where do you get a blanket of at least 13 inches of limestone? That's like cement. Bags of cement trucks, just dumping it. Millions of dump trucks dumping and dumping and dumping until you get 13 inches. How do you create that? See, the evidences for a worldwide flood are there. But you'll see the critics say, hey, there's no evidence for a worldwide flood. Yes, there is, all around us. And science supports it. But they don't support it at the same time because their worldview or starting point is millions and millions of years with just little itty bitty catastrophisms along the way. There are a few big ones that wiped out 75, 95% or whatever life that was on Earth or whatever at the time. But my point is that they're starting from really an atheistic evolution, naturalistic. Those are the big words that they use to describe it, meaning that everything was on its own without any help from anyone. No divine source, no nothing, which I get. I get why we would tend to believe that, because we really don't see a divine being in front of us in the way perhaps we would like to see a divine being, or could imagine seeing a divine being, looking around at nature, you either understand the mindset of the creator, or you look at nature and say, wow, isn't Mother Nature clever? You know? All right, back to this. Did dinosaurs once live 20,000 years ago? Now, there's two different sciences or interpretation of sciences of the evidence that they both share. Creationists share this as well as an evolutionist. As a matter of fact, it was evolutionary paleontologists that created this from the impression in the ground. So you've got those two. Now, what is so majorly different between the two, other than one is done by naturalism, which means there was no God that did any of this, and the other is that it was done by a God. It was direct and directly superintended, and it was deliberate. And there's design. Okay, we have that, but it's the timelines that is really at odds with one another. From the creationist standpoint, life on Earth, not the actual granite rock itself, but life on Earth is no more than 6 to 10,000 years old. On the other hand, evolution, the Earth is 4.51 billion years old. Life on Earth starts 3.5 billion years ago. And then any kind of like fossilized, some kind of realized or developed life starts around 1 billion years ago with pond scum that then divides into what we are today and what trees and plants are today. That's kind of gives you a real quick overview. Dinosaurs 200 million years ago to 65 or 66 million years ago. From the creationist standpoint, there was a 7-day creation week, say 6,000 years ago, 6 literal days of creation, 24-hour, and then there was a rest day after it was all over with. And there was a worldwide flood 1,600 years after that, which was approximately 4,400 years ago from today. And then the fossil record, the destruction of the dinosaurs, all took place during that time period, that 1-year time period of the Noachian flood, that 500 indigenous people throughout the world speak of it in their legends. Isn't that proof? Some would say, no, it's not. Well, who's going to go tell those 500 indigenous people throughout the world that their legends are wrong and that there's 499 other people all over the world that are essentially saying the same thing as you? Who's going to go do that? Okay. Let's talk about carbon dating. Carbon dating is a very interesting way of determining how old something is. Now, the rule is this. In order for carbon dating to work, 2 things have to occur. Number 1, it had to have been living. Let me show you what I mean. Here's a piece of dinosaur skin, okay? This at one time, this is hadrosaur skin. You see the texture of that? Isn't that cool? Yeah. And I was just looking at one of the comments. Dinosaurs are pure fiction. There is a number of people that believe that dinosaurs never existed. I find that interesting. I'm not sure where that comes from, as far as where that idea comes from. Obviously, then all this must be faked or something, but there's hundreds of these in the Paluxy River in limestone. So, but that's not the purpose of this program today. Okay. In order to carbon date something, it's got to be a living thing at one time, such as wood, person, leather, a bone. Okay, you get the idea. And it has to be less than 100,000 years old, as one would reckon it from the evolutionary standpoint. 50,000 max is even better. And here's the reason why. Carbon-14 has a half-life of 5,730 years. What that means is if I was to die, okay, I have a certain amount of carbon-14 in me. Now, in 5,700 years, I'll have half of that in me. And they could look at that and say, oh, he died 5,700 years ago, give or take. If they found me 10,000 years from now or so, I would have 1/4 of the carbon-14 in me, and they would say, oh, he died approximately 10, 11,000 years ago. So that's what they do is there's an assumption of how much should be in there. And then the amount that they find in there, they determine, based on that assumption, that it is X amount of years old. Now, when it comes to dating, you'll find there are assumptions in the equation. So you really can be somewhat confident, but at the same time, a little bit reserved and not too cocky when it comes to dating things, especially through dating such as potassium, argon, or whatnot. Again, there's assumptions, and if you look into it deeper than just the conversation that we having here, you can look at both sides and see if those assumptions are such that gives you the impression that it's not reliable or it is reliable. We'll let you go and do that. But when it comes to carbon-14, radiocarbon-14, you have to have something that's living in less than 100,000 years. Now, case in point, this dinosaur skin is rock. It's, according to evolution, 66 million years old. This would not be a candidate for carbon dating, would it? Well, let me tell you what happened. There were some creationists that decided to test to see whether or not there was carbon in dinosaur bones and petrified wood. So they took 16 specimens, and they were very meticulous in their protocols that they followed in order to have pure specimens, meaning uncontaminated, using clean stainless steel, opening things up and getting the inside of it so there was no exterior contamination. They went inside the bone, or rock, bone, fossil, and took, or wood / petrified wood, and took the samples out. Were very careful. They put it in acid baths and a whole protocol that we can't go into tonight in regards to how they prepared them. But let's just assume that the preparation was done well enough in order to sidestep the possibility of contamination. They sent them into an independent lab. And the independent lab, they weren't told what the things were. So there was no bias on part of the lab when they calculated how much carbon or not were in these dinosaur bones. I'm going to just share a few of them with you. And I'm going to show you I'll show you this. Well, let me show it to you first. Here we have right here, Hadrosaur vertebrae. That's right. So they had something that looked similar to this. This is a vertebrae, dinosaur vertebrae. There's where the spinal cord went through. And they had this tested, something like this tested. It came back at, you ready for this? I'm going to show it to you. Came back at 20,850, and we'll just call them carbon dating years, okay, just for the sake of discussion. 20,850 carbon dating years, give or take 90 years. Now, this is an independent that works for many, many paleontologists, evolutionists, They're not creationists. They're not biasing this with any particular launching pad or assumption. Their only assumption is the amount of carbon-14 that should be, has been about for however many years. That's the only assumption they had, at least I'm aware of. So let me continue down. There's another hadrosaur vertebrae that was sent in, 28,790 carbon dating years. Another hadrosaur bone went to the lab, 32,770 years. You can see them right here, all three of those. Now, the biggest criticism we get for presenting this is this incense. People are incensed, I should say, saying things like, dinosaur bones aren't carbon datable. You don't carbon date dinosaur bones. Right, because the assumption is is that the hadrosaur skin that I just showed you is at least 66 million, if not older, years old. So there would be no carbon dating in it. So why would you even bother? All 16 samples, including a Triceratops horn. And by the way, the Triceratops horn was 41,010 years, give or take 220 years. There's carbon-14 in dinosaur bones, just like we found soft tissue in dinosaur bones. Now we're finding that there's carbon-14 in dinosaur bones. Huh? What does that mean? Does that mean that we should scrap carbon dating just because of that? No. No, but it's telling us something. Why is it that this isn't being shouted from the rooftops? I mean, this report that was done came out in a creationist journal in 2015. And you would think this should make the headlines in the newspaper. Well, friends, here's one person that feels that it's important enough to get it out there. Friends, according to carbon-14, radio carbon-14 dating from an independent lab, dinosaurs were around 20,850 years ago. What? Now, from a creationist perspective, I believe that dinosaur died in the worldwide flood 4,400 years ago. Well, somebody has said, I've heard this before, hey, that's not anywhere near, 4,400 years, 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. That's true. But look at the difference between, say, 30,000 and 66 million years. There's a little bit more of a distance there than what we're talking about here. So does science, carbon-14, support evolution or paleontology from an evolutionary standpoint of modern geology, long periods of time? Or does it support the creation worldview where we have these dinosaurs running about and dying 4,400 years ago? Here's the evidence. And if there was any contamination, it certainly wouldn't have been every single one. There would have been ones that perhaps read much differently, but they're consistent. It appears that dinosaurs that died during the flood come anywhere between 20,000 to 49,000 carbon dating years in the amount of carbon that is found consistently. And this was not, these 16 aren't the only ones that they've done. They've done, I believe, in total up to 40 of these specimens. And it's consistent. So what are we going to do? Rethink this idea. Did we come from apes, aliens, or Adam? Is the evolutionary proposition, first off, is it intellectually and emotionally satisfying? And if it's not, there's a reason for it. If you were going to look at the evidence, at least just one piece of evidence to suggest one or the other tonight, the carbon-14 suggests that dinosaurs lived not very long ago, and certainly not 66 million years ago. It is more in alignment with the Genesis record than it is with the Charles Lyell, Charles Darwin, Hutton, Buffon, and their narrative and their way of interpreting the evidence. I want to thank you for joining us today, and I want to also just point out one thing, if I may do a brief commercial. Down in the description, you'll see a couple of books that are there. If you're interested in seeing photographic evidence that giants and humans once walked the earth together, Valley of the Giants is going to be for you. And what it does is it shares dinosaur tracks and what appears to be giant human footprints in and around the Paluxy River in Glen Rose, Texas. It's 76 pages, and I think you'll be absolutely not only blown away, but entertained at the same time. It's one of those books that is a must-have. Thank you for joining us today on this live, and you have a great day. I'm John Adolfi saying, hey, Did we come from apes, aliens, or Adam? You guys have a wonderful afternoon, day, or morning, wherever you are in the world. Take care.